All right, well, let's get going. Without further ado, welcome everybody to CSR Marketplace Virtual 2026 and today's session, Creating Shared Value and Scalability with Your Grantees, with our sponsors at Story Pirates Changemakers. My name is Katie Stearns. I'm the Vice President of Membership and Fundraising at ACCP, and I'm glad you're here. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us. Some of you may know that ACCP is the premier membership association for corporate social impact practitioners, and all of our programs, including this week's CSR Marketplace Virtual, are designed to advance the mission of our organization by sharing knowledge, fostering solutions, and cultivating a community of corporate social impact peers. So we're glad that you are part of that community today. This is one of 8 sessions that ACCP is hosting as part of this year's CSR Marketplace Virtual. You can see the others on your screen here. And registration remains open for the upcoming session. So if you see something else that catches your eye, we hope you will join us. We're actually recording all of the sessions, and those will be posted to ACCP's website next week and available for your viewing pleasure through the end of the calendar year. Before we get started, I want to highlight some of our other upcoming ACCP programs. If you are based in Chicago, rainy Chicago, like me, there is still time to join us for the in-person CSR exchange happening next Tuesday, June 23rd. That's just one of the local events that we're hosting this year. We will also be in Seattle and Philly and LA and New York and Minneapolis before the end of the year. On July 9th, ACCP members are invited to join us for a virtual topical member discussion, which will be an insider sneak peek of the findings from our annual CSR Insights survey. And then on July 15th, members and non-members alike are welcome to join us for a webcast with the full release of those CSR Insights survey results. If you're curious about what ACCP membership is all about, we're offering a deep dive into membership benefits on July 16th. And then don't miss the ACCP conference. It is the event of the year. We'll be in Boston in September, and early bird registration for that ends next Friday, June 26th. There's much more information about these events and all of our other upcoming programs at accp.org. Before we get started, just a few quick Zoom logistics for you. We have turned on closed captioning and live transcript today. So if you'd like to see the transcript, look for that CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and click on the caret to select View Full Transcript. We also encourage you to interact with our speakers and each other by using the Zoom chat feature and by posting any questions that you have throughout today's presentation in the Q&A function. We're going to have some dedicated time at the end for Q&A, so we hope you will post questions as they come to you, and we'll make sure we have time to get to those at the end. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. We're joined by Jamie Salka, CEO and co-founder of Story Pirates Changemakers, and Amy Fiore, Director of Development from Story Pirates Changemakers. So Amy and Jamie, I'm turning it over to you.
Hey everybody, great to be here with you today. I am Jamie Salka. Jamie is a weird nickname for Benjamin. It comes from the end of Benjamin. Everyone's called me Jamie my entire life. I hope you do as well. I am the co-founder and CEO of Story Pirates, and Amy.
Hi, everyone. So nice to be here. My name is Amy Fiore. I am the Director of Development for Story Pirates Changemakers and also serve as the Director for the NonProfit HelpDesk, which gives me the opportunity to work with a lot of different nonprofit organizations and bring a varied perspective as a result of that as well.
So if you've never heard of Story Pirates, we started Story Pirates in 2004 in this tiny little 60-seat black box theater in the basement of the Drama Bookshop in Midtown Manhattan. It was started by me and my co-founder Lee Overtree, and at least at the time, a totally unknown Lin-Manuel Miranda and Tommy Kail were our co-producers. They were writing In the Heights on this little out-of-tune piano that we were doing Story Pirates on. And Story Pirates started off as an arts educational theater company. It was a group of friends, mostly from Northwestern University, comedians that were soliciting stories written by elementary school kids and then adapting them into SNL style sketch comedy. The show was as funny as you could imagine kids' imaginations being, as unfiltered and weird and surprising and delightful, but also it had this incredible side effect of making kids see, often in an instant, like a light bulb moment, wait a minute, writing isn't just something that teachers make you do. Writing is something that you do to make people laugh or to make people think or to tell your story to your community. And so we started working in tiny theaters like the Drama Bookshop and in schools in the New York area, mostly in the Bronx that first year, but we'd expanded to about 75 schools by year 3. And we were teaching creative writing workshops and then taking student stories and adapting them into assemblies. And then we had this cool moment happen in 2007. Jon Stewart, at the sort of height of his first tour of duty at The Daily Show, became a really vocal advocate for us. We didn't know him, but he came and saw a show and apparently fell in love with it and started talking about it on places like Larry King, which at the time was seen by millions of people every night. And it really just changed our world overnight. We started getting invited to bigger and bigger theaters, and eventually performing at the Kennedy Center for both of Obama's inaugurations. And in 2010, we were invited to the Geffen Playhouse in Los Angeles for a week to work in some of the schools that they partner with. At the end of that week, they asked us if we would be interested in forming a full-time residency with them as the educational theater company in residence for the Geffen. In 2017, we launched the Story Pirates podcast, which was basically the same show that we'd been doing in theaters and auditoriums for the last almost 15 years at that point. And I think it was a little bit right place at the right time. It was when podcasts for kids and families were just coming out, and most people who were starting a show were trying to figure out what they were doing, but we were kind of a machine at that point. And when we burst onto the scene, it became the #1 podcast for kids and families overnight, and it has stayed there. We have had 100 million downloads. We are now in season 8. Almost every A-list celebrity has been made a cameo or a guest appearance on our show, helping us take stories written by kids and adapting them into sketch comedy. The same thing we've always done since we started. At this point, we're now have grown bigger. We produce not just the Story Pirates podcast, but the Cat in the Hat podcast. We're the producers of the Looney Tunes podcast. We have a sports podcast with Steph Curry and his company at Audible, and a hip-hop history podcast with Questlove on iHeartRadio. And we have a national tour that travels around the country doing live shows, again, in big theaters, sold out in state after state. So very happy to be with you here today to talk a little bit about our partnerships with corporations, how fruitful and also challenging some of that has been. I think some of our struggles and triumphs will feel familiar to you, but we're here to sort of talk through how we think about all of that stuff in hopes that it's helpful for you as well.
We were really excited to have the opportunity when we were talking to ACCP about what this session could be about, because we have learned that partnerships are in fact everything. And I've had the vantage point of being with Story Pirates and identifying, the ways that we are able to talk with outside organizations about what we do and work with them has really propelled our organization. But I've also learned that as a professional, as a nonprofit consultant, as the head of the NonProfit HelpDesk. What I've learned is the more we talk to folks, the more you get to know what other organizations' missions are, what other folks focus on when they're thinking about their work. All of that creates a connection between people and also opportunity, where we're able to identify where is there something that is simpatico between myself and another person, my organization and another organization, that we can work on together to make our work better. And that has really been a guiding factor in the way that we operate at Story Pirates. It's been a guiding factor in the way that I've operated my career as well. One of the things that Jamie once said to me very early on in working at Story Pirates is we had done a call, and I had sort of apologized because I sat through the call and went, oh, there's nothing really here. It sort of felt like it might have been a waste of time. And I apologized afterwards, and he said, I don't see it that way. In fact, I don't think a meeting is ever a waste of time. There's always something that comes out of it. And maybe you don't see what that is right at the onset. Maybe it's not apparent right now, but the goodwill that we put out into the world by talking about what it is that we are doing and the human connection that we've made to another person, just in my experience, 9 times out of 10 pays dividends later on. And that was the onus for the way we wanted to present this session, but also the way that we think about the way that we do our work. Jamie, we're in a session talking to CSR folks. And so I think before we jump into the next section of it, I think it would be helpful. Do you want to talk about why CSR at Story Pirates, a teeny tiny nonprofit organization? Why does it work for us?
Yeah. So we are a sort of funny organization. We have this dichotomy, I think, between being this teeny tiny organization that you mentioned and also having an unusually large footprint in the world. There are about 1 million listeners a week to the Story Pirates podcast. We work in hundreds and hundreds of schools around the country. And so there's a tension between the ways in which we are big and the ways in which we are small. And one of the things that's come up for us as one of the more significant challenges we've faced is the amount of stories that we get written by kids, right? Like the thing that we're best known for, taking stories and turning them into something cool. That produces a lot of interest from kids around the country. And, when we started out, we were getting several hundred stories a year, and that felt like a lot at the time. We made a promise to ourselves and to our audience early on that we felt like was really important to clarify something about who we are and how we want kids to understand us. Specifically, it's really easy to look at Story Pirates and think that it's a writing contest, and it is not. It is true that we can only adapt a small selection of the stories that are sent in to us, but we really wanted a way to communicate that the stories that are chosen for our podcast or back in the day for our assemblies in schools, those are not the winners. They're all the winners. And so the way that we came up with to communicate that to the audience is something we call Story Love. It is an initiative whereby we write a thoughtful, thorough response to every single kid who sends us a story. I didn't used to have to clarify this in the old days, but it is written by a real human every single time who really thinks about the story and digests it and spends some time thinking about what the kid's intention was and finding a way to let the kid know that we got it. We appreciate their writing. It's not a correction. It's not like we're taking a red pen to their grammar or usage or spelling. It's like a great New York Times review for every single kid who sends us a story. And at this point, it is about 30,000 stories every year that get sent to us. And we have made this promise that we're going to send every single kid back a positive, thoughtful response. And we hit a point, I don't know, maybe it was around 2008 or 9, where we were doing all of that work in-house. And the Story Pirates themselves are so incredible, just an incredibly dedicated group of often very, very funny humans who really care about kids. But it was killing us. It was like a real problem to be able to respond to them with kids. And it was a few thousand back then. Now, like I said, it's tens of thousands. And at a certain point, we hit the wall and we're like, we can't keep doing this, but we also can't stop doing it. So what do? And we just started begging our friends at first to volunteer and help out. Eventually, someone had an idea that we should maybe go to the pizza place down the corner and see if their employees would help out. And you can imagine one thing led to another, and at a certain point, it dawned on us that corporations often are looking for opportunities to volunteer, something we had no idea about. And so we started working with some companies. I had a friend who was working at Snapchat at the time, and she was the head of CSR there. And I had gone to high school with her, and I sat down and said, we really need help. I think this is the kind of thing you guys might be interested in. And she said to us, how much does it cost? And I said, what? And she said, what do we pay you for it? And I said, what do you want to pay us for it? It hadn't even occurred to us that there could be some type of consideration for the work that we put into to running the program. And it was a revelation and incredibly helpful, and it sort of snowballed at exactly the right place at the right time, meaning like as the number of stories started to snowball, so did our relationships with incredible organizations, corporations. And at this point we're working in, I don't know what the number is. It's got to be 100, 150 corporations over the last several years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about it is that it started with an honest conversation. And I think that that's one of the things that we've identified, that these honest conversations are the thing that we need, but actually also one of the hardest things to find. The reality of what we are facing is we are a tiny organization, and we truly are working with corporations that are asking us to scale globally. We are working with we work truly around the clock. We are working with teams worldwide, and that meant, and we're based in New York and LA, and so that meant that we have enough of our team that can cover just about every time zone. But the reality is that is asking, some of our artists who are glad to have the work to be working at, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we had to pay them to do that. And so that has been, a really interesting thing for us that we so what happened was the way this went, and what was atypical to other nonprofit organizations is at the start of the pandemic, which is around the time that we'd established a lot of relationships with corporations. It was really starting to move along, and then March 2020 happened. And we had been having a couple conversations with corporations, but overnight, the programming that we did basically ceased to exist. We could not be in public theaters. We could not be in schools. And so we truly might have had to close our doors. And that was a very real consideration. And we got a phone call from two different corporations, one we had already been working with and one that we hadn't. And they both said to us that story note thing that you guys do, can you do it digitally? And I just said, yes. And I had an intern on the call with me who had been managing this program by putting handwritten stories on paper and rolly suitcases and golf pencils and bringing them to the boardrooms of corporations. And he immediately started texting me saying, "What are you doing?" No, we can't. And the reality was I knew the situation we were facing, that the doors were about to close. And luckily, I had access and a little bit of moxie, where I just said yes and then was texting him saying, "I'll call you as soon as we're done. We're going to solve it." And luckily, Jamie didn't didn't fire me in that moment, and rather said, "Yeah, let's figure it out." But the fascinating piece was we knew that we were overpromising at that time. We knew that we were going to be able to solve it, but we were pretending in that moment that we could solve it, that we didn't feel the power imbalance was such that we didn't feel like we could say no to the corporation. We needed that funding. We needed that partnership in order to survive as an organization and in order to keep on serving kids. And where most nonprofit organizations would have said, well, then there we go. Then that's, we have to focus on mission and on the programming that we do. We actually sort of stopped everything and built a clunky machine through Google Drive and a complicated series of documents. We overnighted a scanner to the office that one person at a time would take the subway in a hazmat suit to go into the office to start scanning stories so that we could make that possible. And it brings me to the slide that is on the screen right now, because we did this for a while, and the first one that we did was, the first versions that we did were really problematic. We built them on the wrong platform that, firewalls didn't allow our corporate volunteers to have access to. And there were a couple corporations that actually asked this one question that really changed everything for us. And that question was really simply, what else can we do to help? And that was a fascinating moment when we had this opportunity um, to realize that actually a corporation wanted to be in partnership with us. Because what we were doing and what we have done and what a lot of our relationships is essentially fee for service, right? We have a product, we have a service that we provide to corporations that solves a need, and we're thrilled to do it. It solves a need for us, it solves a need for them. It works incredibly well. But sometimes we work with corporations that say, we have a global team and we want you to, this week work with 20 people. It's really nice to meet you. And next week they say, we'd like you to work with 1,500 people within the next 10 days. And that is a huge lift for the two and a half of us that are working in this program. And the partnership piece is when we feel and when we have learned that we have permission to say, that's going to be challenging for us. We're up for the challenge. Can you meet us halfway? Can you, for example, we were talking to Microsoft. We run all of our programs on Zoom. It works better for our organization. And Microsoft said, we can't use Zoom. And we said, that makes sense. We get it. We don't have Teams. And they said, well, that, of course, we can give you licenses for Teams so that you can just run your program on Teams. And it was, oh, it never occurred to us. We were scrambling, how quickly can we get Teams on all our moderators' computers and how do we have to solve this? The question that changes everything is the one that gives permission to have an honest conversation that acknowledges, hey, nonprofit, we know you're small, and we know that we don't think the way that you do. We know that we have the ability and the access to be able to scale things very quickly. And if you are able to ask the question, how can we help? All of a sudden that opens a whole lot of doors, and we have found that we feel comfortable giving a very different answer in order to be able to scale with them. We have one partner that does this really well. Jamie, you wanna talk about this, or you want me to explore it?
Yeah, I can sort of tee it up and we can bounce back and forth. We are, I probably on our 8th year or so with NBCUniversal. It's one of our first large partnerships, and it like undoubtedly NBCUniversal was the first organization that we worked with that asked us, what more can we do? Can we make this a more holistic partnership? And I think, the only thing I want to add, Amy, to what you were saying on the last slide was that, I think that this is probably something that comes up pretty frequently in partnerships between nonprofits and corporations. And, sometimes at conferences like this, it's acknowledged and it's really, really helpful in creating more conversation and awareness around it. But there is actually like a problem at the heart of collaborations between corporations and nonprofits. And not all, but I would say most nonprofits are much smaller than the corporation that they're working with. You don't even have to be as big as NBCUniversal to sort of eclipse the Story Pirates in size by many degrees. And so there's this dynamic that occurs where corporations are really used to an insane level of professionalism, which we understand, but we are, it sometimes creates like a scramble to be able to meet it. Just like one simple example is the person who runs our Story Lab program is a part-time employee. She works 2 or 3 days a week. I think she has written in her signature block like I do not work on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the Story Pirates. If you need something, then contact my colleague. That's something that barely exists at a large company. A company assumes that things can be done anytime that they need to by any number of people. And at Story Pirates, it's really just Samantha who isn't there on Tuesdays. And so, I think that I really just use that as an example of the kind of complication that can come up that's sort of unexpected, that like wouldn't necessarily come up between a company like NBC and just a typical vendor. There's something different inherent in this setup. And, but there's also opportunity to sort of turn those differences into something really powerful with the question, Amy, that you brought up, which is, what more can we do to help? And I think NBC has been really eye-opening for us, not just because they've been great to work with, which they have, but also in showing us a path toward opening up our relationships with other companies that we work with and starting to transform them from transactional relationships to transformational relationships, to be redundant. All right, so just like a quick little tour of NBC Universal, we do a ton of Story Love events with them, but they've also looked for ways to both ask us what matters to us as an organization, like what are our goals. They've gone out of their way to let us know what theirs are. There's like an interesting Venn diagram, I think, Amy, between what's motivating a company like Story Pirates. We're mission based. We want to see a change on like specific kids' faces. That is what is motivating us. And NBC also cares about this stuff, but there's considerations that we wouldn't necessarily even have thought of when we started these kinds of partnerships, which is just like they have employee engagement mandates. There are numbers that they're looking to hit in terms of how satisfied their employees are working at the company and how many employees get a chance to have an uplifting experience like the ones that we provide. And understanding that those are their motivations, and the fact that they may differ from ours is not a problem. I think that's something we've learned, is like that's so that you can understand where the Venn diagram meets up, where their motivations and your motivations, even though they're not the same, can sort of coalesce around a single powerful program.
And
So
truly, the partnership is what, by being in partnership with them, it's opened up the opportunities for us to have those conversations. So some examples, and I'll move through these relatively quickly because we want to get to more things in the interest of time. One of the things that we learned was the way we run our volunteer events. They actually truly started with a misunderstanding. They had understood that we were going to partner volunteers up in small groups, and we were planning on having everyone work independently. And when we understood that this was the idea they had, we shifted pretty quickly and said, yeah, let's work in small groups. And it turned out to be one of the greatest edits that we made to our program. It created a team building opportunity that was incredibly important to them, that was sort of, net zero for us. We were happy to be able to provide that as a volunteer experience. We still got all of the stories read and loved in the way that we needed them to be loved. And we then had something that was really meaningful to the employees, that not only gave them an opportunity to give back, but allowed us to talk about our program differently.
and
Um,
just to add a little
yeah.
color to that, like what specifically the misunderstanding that we had with NBC led to a transformation in Story Love, how it gets run, where at first it used to be really meaningful, but also a solitary quiet activity when people were just
Yeah.
sitting looking at their own piece of paper, writing a note on it. All of a sudden, because they were picturing us doing it in small groups, when we did it their way, the room erupted into laughter. Like it was literally a loud, it was like a completely different energy to the experience that all of a sudden created this organic team building effort, like without ever having to do, an inorganic trust fall in a boardroom. All of a sudden, people were just laughing because the ideas the kids write are so silly, and it felt really real and buoyant.
And became something that was replicable for us. There also were things through our partnership with NBC that we were able to tap into, both not only their incredibly unique and incredibly beneficial opportunities that they were able to provide to us through visibility and collaboration. They also respected what we could bring to the table as a creative organization. They came to us when they were promoting the DVD release of certain movies, things like that, because they recognized that they had something that they wanted to pitch to children, and we had the unique ability to talk to kids and had kids' ears in a way that they weren't able to do. And so that level of respect that we don't necessarily see that, working with other nonprofit organizations who are trying to work with corporations, we don't always see that same two-way version of understanding about how they can be beneficial to one another. NBC also obviously has the ability to give us a lot of visibility, but not only did they do that, it was really important to them to partner us with other of the nonprofits that they worked with. So they created a PSA, but they didn't just use NBC staff who could very easily put together a PSA. Rather, they paired us with an organization that worked with high school kids who were learning AV technology, who put together a PSA for us. And they didn't just put that on the shelf and say to us, go put that on your own YouTube page. They then started running it on all of their channels.
Like
And
on
that,
Saturday Night Live, the Today Show, like
yeah,
for real visibility. Yeah.
in an incredible way. And lastly, they turned to their employees and said, how do you want to be involved? This is sort of the breadth of what Story Pirates is and what they can do. And the best example of that we love so much is their DreamWorks animator said, well, we love writing notes on the stories, but could we draw some pictures and send those back to the kids too? And so we had this opportunity to not only send a note of encouragement back to the kids, we were able to send, we had a school that was that dealing with some real struggles, and we had the opportunity to send them back something that was incredibly meaningful, even above and beyond the things that we had already done. Jamie, I'm going to move us along really quickly
Please
so that
do,
we
yeah.
can be sure that we can get to everything. As we said, we are really fueled by partnerships, and we are creating a strategic framework to house those partnerships. Jamie, you want to very, very briefly tell everyone what the Satellites program is?
Yep. Highest level overview. We are working with incredible cultural institutions, school districts around the country, and corporations to have a Story Pirates presence in every city around the country, every rural area. The idea is to blanket the country with, and maybe even internationally, with local Story Pirates programs, which are presented by companies and cultural institutions in each area. It'll be managed by us centrally from our headquarters in New York and LA, but the idea is to have more Story Pirates on the ground, not just over the airwaves with our podcast, but actual Story Pirates programs in schools and theaters and cultural institutions around the country.
So before we get to questions, we wanted to just take the opportunity. We've talked a lot about this Story Love program, and we wanted to give you the opportunity to see what it looks like. I'm going to switch to this screen. We have a short video. I'm probably going to cut it. I have time for it. I'm going to just show you
Story Pirates presents the Story Love instructional video with your hosts, Amber Ruffin and Taco Mitten.
Hey everybody, my name is Amber Ruffin and I'm here to talk to you about a really special thing you're taking part in today called Story Love, presented by the Story Pirates.
And I'm Taco Mitten, a fictional character made by a real kid. Let's get started.
Who are the Story Pirates? The Story Pirates teach creative writing to kids. Then they take the amazing stories that kids write and turn them into live performances, an award-winning podcast, a TV show, and more.
Meow. What is Story Love?
Story Love is where volunteers like you help the Story Pirates provide kids with positive, personalized letters of encouragement for every single story they receive.
Your encouragement will help make these incredible young authors want to keep learning and keep writing. How Story Love works.
Okay, so let's start with the easiest part. Read the story. And anytime you spot a great detail, like a piece of mozzarella cheese that gets bitten by a venomous snake and gains immortality, be sure to share it with other volunteers.
That's what makes a Story Love event so fun.
So once you finish reading, it's time to write your note. First, address the author and kick things off with a compliment for their story. Then, tell the author about some specific details you enjoyed. Maybe you liked that the story was set in a cave in space, or that the hamster really did achieve his dream of becoming president.
Feel free to write multiple sentences about the details you love, including any drawings.
Next, ask the kid author some questions. What did the snake do after it won the spelling bee? Or how did that waffle iron learn to talk? Finally, encourage the kid author to keep writing and sign your note with "Love, a Story Pirate." That's right, you are a story pirate now. Congratulations. And that, my friends, is, actually, one last thing.
Please use clear handwriting, complete sentences, and correct grammar and spelling.
Sorry, I don't know what came over old Taco Mitten. I guess cats just really like clear handwriting, complete sentences, and correct grammar.
If you're having a good time loving stories, we want to know about it. Give the Story Pirates a shout by tagging @StoryPirates or using the hashtag StoryLove. Thank you so much for volunteering today. It means a lot to me because I used to perform with the Story Pirates myself back in the day. Check my resume, it's true. Now get to story loving.
Thank you.
All right, so to give you a sense of what this actually looks like, that's our favorite introductory video, and it is true, Amber Ruffin is one of us. So we meet folks on a Zoom similar to this, and we give them access to a page that looks like this, and we're going to just jump to a story and take a look at this one. Jamie, I am going to invite you. This is a story that is written by a fourth grader named Eleanor from Utah. It is entitled Mattress Sale Day, and I'm going to zoom in so that you can read. It is a delightful length of a story. Jim, you want to read that out loud to everyone?
All right, here we go. On Mattress Sale Day, people buy 1 bazillion mattresses and bring them to the park. Then they make a house out of 1 bazillion mattresses. Then they live in it for a week. The end.
It's a perfect story. It's a perfect story. But often, as it happens, when we receive stories written by kids, we leave the story and say, I've got a lot of questions. And so that is the thing that we get to do with Story Love. And so, hang on one second. I can just click on Love This Story. There we go. I don't know if we're able to see the chat right now. Jamie, are you able to see the chat on our screen?
Yes, I think so.
Awesome. So, folks, if you are still watching, we are going to invite you to give us some comments and thoughts for loving this story for Eleanor. So, Jamie, while you are getting those, what we want first is, and you can see the instructions at the top, complimenting the author's specific details about the story that we loved. So, we would love to know from you, how might we compliment this author? Do we have any there? Or Jamie, you want to give me some?
You know, I don't know if I see responses from people in the audience. I might need someone from ACCP to let us know.
I'm happy to jump in to help.
Thank you, Katie.
And encourage folks to jump in. I can say that one of my comments on the story was that it was high drama, but I would have loved some more description about the house that was built of mattresses. And I invite others to put things in the chat. I will help make sure that Amy gets those for the feedback note. Oh, we've got a bazillion mattresses is so many and a very funny visual. What happened during the week they were living in the house? I love it, Meg.
And that was what happened during the, oh yeah.
What happened during the week they were living in the house?
Have any other comments there?
I just want to add, I laughed just thinking about how many mattresses were in the park and how much they must have been overflowing out of every part of it.
And then we also have a comment from Angela saying, this is so cool. How many mattresses do you use to sleep? And do they come in different sizes for different uses? Amy, can you like testing your typing speed by making you
There
keep up
is
with us?
honestly truly nothing more stressful than typing while other people are staring at you. It is an amazing thing, and also a little bit terrified of taco mittens. So there are those two elements. In the interest of time today, we'll actually add a little bit more to this note. So I won't send this note yet. Usually we would then say something to Eleanor like, keep writing amazing stories, and then love the Story Pirates. Pirates. And that's an example of how this works. And so now I think that we can open it up. I'll stop sharing my
That's
screen
great.
perhaps,
Thank you.
and then we can jump to some questions.
Terrific. Yeah, I want to invite folks, go ahead and drop any questions that you have in the chat or in Q&A, but maybe we can start with one that I have for y'all. I'm curious because, so many of our audience collaborate with a lot of nonprofit partners and other partners. How can they evaluate whether Story Partners is a program that's a good fit for them and their communities?
So it is, one of the things that we have found for Story Pirates is that it works really well for connecting teams that are hybrid or remote. That does seem, it was really an accidental niche that we found, but because we can do the program remotely and really you don't need to leave, you need an hour and you don't need to leave your desk. That often is the case, but the truth is, we also give us a call and have a conversation. That is actually, and that has been if a new corporation is not allowed to do Story Pirates until they talk to me. Plain and simple. If a corporation has been with us for a long time, we're able to schedule events, but it does really go back, and that's something we learned, that it went back to the partnership piece. Something that I learned working with so many other nonprofits as well, that I am now confident enough in our project to say, you know what, this feels a little bit difficult. You're in, an Australian time zone, and the time that you are saying is going to require that I'm paying someone to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. Can we just scooch it, 3 hours in either direction, that kind of thing. And all of that happens just by being my ability to say, this is an incredible working artist who's going to be meeting you on this Zoom to make sure that the program is engaging. And we can't say that in a way, it just doesn't go over as well over email.
Understood. Well, and like you say, partnership is everything, right? So you've got to get that
Everything.
right.
Yeah.
And then, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no.
Okay. The last question that I would love to squeeze in is thinking about the community side of things, right? Because lots of our listeners also themselves are in communities with schools or work with schools and other organizations that have children that would be great story writers. So I'm curious how folks can think about bringing the program to schools near them or schools they might partner with.
Yeah, great question. You can always reach out to us. You can contact Amy directly, but just storypirates.org has all of our various links. If you want to bring us to your individual kid's school, we'd love that. We're also thinking really big these days, as we mentioned, looking to partner with the local children's museum or the local school district. We're working with performing arts centers around the country. We're working with universities. You could introduce us to the alumni office at your alma mater, and they can often serve as a gateway to the entire school district, like every third and fourth grader in their area. We're even partnering with a few sports teams. And so, cultural institutions that are already deeply embedded in their community, have the trust of the community, often have relationships with the district, and we would love any help getting connected to those folks.
That's great. The power of story really transcends all types of organization. So thank you both for sharing with us today and for being part of this. And I guess we have to thank Taco Mitten as well for terrifying us
Always.
all about grammar. But we're really grateful that y'all shared your insights with us today, and we would love feedback from all of you in the audience. So if you would just take a minute and either scan the QR code on your screen or click on the link in the chat, we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's session. Jamie and Amy, thank you again. I hope that we will see both of you and everyone else on another CSR Marketplace virtual or another upcoming ACCP program. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.